Sith Talk.
Ladies and gentlemen, rebel scum and loyal to the Empire, this is Sith Talk, the show that talks about all things Star Wars movies, Star Wars TV, Star Wars books, Star Wars comics, Star Wars games. We talk about it all. I am one of your hosts, Zach Chrisman, aka the Lord of Lore, and joining me is Brandon the Bendu. Brandon, how are you doing? What is up? Catch us up.
I'm good, man. I'm thoroughly exhausted because it is the first couple of weeks of school, and that's been intense as always, but even more magnified this year with the new job that I have. So it's been a lot of fun, but I'm definitely sleeping quite well.
That's awesome. Yeah, sleeping well is good. That's about the only thing. Well, I was going to say that's about the only thing I do right, but that's really negative, and that's not true. But one of the things I prioritize is sleep, so I will give myself that one. Yeah, I mean, I guess, it's like they say, if you're working, you're busy. And it's just, It's kind of crazy. And, it's been it's been a crazy year. Probably one of the more, the last 2 years have been one of the more trying years in my life. But it's starting to really, go by quick. And I feel like some of the things that have been going on in my life, like with my accident and stuff, is everything's really kind of, the year's winding down, even though it doesn't feel like that, if that makes any sense at all. I feel like the year is getting at a more peaceful state, even though it hasn't quite done that yet.
Yeah, I can understand that. You're for most people, this time of year is when things are starting to come to their conclusions and you're getting to the end of projects and stuff like that. It's different for me being a teacher, because it's this is the time of year when things really ramp up, but I know that's not the case for people who aren't in the education field. It's just different, different calendars or whatever.
Mostly, I just mean I'll be getting my permanent teeth in, and I will be going on some trips pretty soon. That's exciting. This weekend, I have another trifecta weekend, and then 2 weeks later, I'm going to Killington for the weekend. Not like a long stay or anything. And then first week in November, I'm going on a cruise. And then, basically the holidays, which are my favorite time of the year, right around the corner. So I guess what I'm saying is I got to go on trips and actually be able to bite into burritos soon.
That'll both very good things, hopefully at the same time.
Yeah, so speaking of things, when it comes to Star Wars, good things, hope around the horizon, I don't know. We'll see. We kind of wanted to talk about and open up with the cancellation of the Acolyte. Basically, we have already gotten word that there is no plans for a season 2 of Acolyte. This is not surprising, yet surprising at the same time for me. And I just opening up. What is your thoughts?
Well, it's hard because The Acolyte is the first major Star Wars project that I have thoroughly disliked. As far as books, there's been a couple books that I either said this isn't for me, or I thought were legitimately just not good books. Namely, falling in that category would be the original Battlefront novel and Ronin. But as far as major projects, this was the one where it's low on my list. It's just not something that captured my attention. It was legitimately upsetting and disappointing, and I went into that ad nauseum on our Best in Butts episode over on the main show on Clashing Sabers. So I'm not going to go into that whole tirade. So I don't want to say that I was happy that it was canceled, because I think that's disrespectful to the creators and disrespectful to people that enjoy it to find happiness out of that. I will say I am not shocked, and I do think it was the best decision because the numbers just bear it out. The viewership went down so significantly. It was the lowest viewed show in number of minutes in out of all the Star Wars live action shows. The drop off was just insanely drastic as far as from the premiere episodes to people who stuck around to the finale. So I won't say that I'm disappointed, or excuse me, I won't say that I'm shocked because it seems that a lot of people were disappointed in the show in a similar fashion. I know all of us on the network to varying degrees felt disappointed by the show. Some of us wanting it to continue to have an opportunity to fix that. Others, maybe not so much, but I definitely wasn't surprised by the decision just because of the, like, it was a mixed reaction to the show, but not a mixed reaction in the way of like a Last Jedi where you have fervent one side and fervent another. There's people that like it and then there's people that don't, but there's nobody out there saying that like The Acolyte is my favorite Star Wars show. There's not really anybody out there it's championing it the way you would like Last Jedi or something like that. So yeah, it popped up on my feed and I was surprised that they had just come out and said it, but because they tend to just let things fade off into the distance. But yeah, I think it was a good decision overall.
I think it was a really good decision by Lucasfilm. Don't sink any more money into something that isn't making a profit. I'm somewhat conflicted about a season 2, but really, I've kind of given that a lot of thought because when it got canceled, I was like, okay, that really sucks. And then I thought about why it sucks for me, because even though this show might be the worst show I've ever watched, and I'm to clarify what I mean by that is if I did not like a show and it did not resonate with me, I would just sign off. Because this is Star Wars, I watched it all the way through to the end. So I'm sure there are worse shows, but I'm saying as far as a show I have completed, it is one of the worst shows I have ever seen because I would just normally, okay, this show isn't for me and drop off and walk away. With that being said, it did leave me conflicted, but really when I'm thinking about it, it's only because Darth Plagueis was in there at the very end for 5 seconds. And
That's fair.
I know that sounds like really cliche me, but like that is a huge thing for me. And while many of our listeners can kind of like laugh it off, oh, Zach, he's being Zach again. Well, to be honest, I've told you all. You already know what I like in Star Wars. You already know my favorite things. I'm a book you've already read. So guess what? I will continue to be that book. And I'm upset because I feel like this was our one opportunity to get Plagueis anytime soon. But when I think about it, in the context of the show, when I watched it, I saw that and I was like, oh yeah, cool, Plagueis is in there. I'm sad that some of the themes that they were exploring in the timeline that they were exploring aren't going to be given a chance to maybe be explored in a better way. Because I did like the premise, the idea of the show. It's just like, it's just overall, it's upsetting. And for me, it's kind of gotten to the point where there's a reason why you haven't had a Sith Talk episode in a while, because I haven't been bothering Brandon. Hey, we should do Sith Talk. I'm really gassed up to do it. And it's not that I'm not gassed up right now. I'm excited and ready to go back, but it's one of those things where, like, No Man's Sky came out and made all these promises, and there's memes that went around that said, I want you to hold the expectation box, and it's a box of No Man's Sky. If I can find a physical copy of the Acolyte series, that will be my new expectation box, because it overall kind of killed my Star Wars steam, and I want to get it back, and I want to get back to the glory days of being really excited for Star Wars, and that's what this episode's kind of about today, is like, where do we go from here as far as Star Wars goes?
Yeah, and I want to preface like our whole conversation that we're going to have with the idea that like, yeah, we're going to be talking about things that we were disappointed in, things that we didn't like, things that are usually deemed air quote negativity. I mean, we call ourselves Clashing Sabers for a reason. We're not cotton candy sabers. Like, we want to bring our real raw perspectives to people, and we do not in any way, shape, or form expect everybody listening to agree with us. As a matter of fact, I'll only speak for myself. I hope that you disagree with me because I want more people to enjoy Star Wars. I really would love to be completely wrong about the Acolyte and somebody to explain to me why that's so. So please don't take this as like us saying, you know, that you shouldn't enjoy this or anything of that nature. This is just like, this is our real perspective as fans that we wanted to share with you guys who are listening. And we have an open forum in kind, you know, go to our Facebook group, email us, you know, get at us on our socials and let us know, you know, where you disagree with us on this stuff or where you agree with us either way. But that kind of said, yeah, it's hard. It's hard when you don't like something in Star Wars. I'm really finding that, like, what do you do next? And this is the first time for me because I can put down a book and I can move on with my life. Like, Ronin not being for me was okay. They made a Visions novel. They tried something cool, didn't work for me. Like, I wish it didn't take me 8 months to read it the first time, and I'm on pace to do that for my reread that I'm doing right now, to go on a podcast and talk about that on the Now This Is Lit podcast, which I'll promote that when that actually happens. But I can put that aside. I can put Battlefront aside and just say, you know, that was a book with minimal impact on the overarching story of Star Wars. This was set up to have a huge impact on the overarching story of Star Wars. You know, you had the twins, you had the Plagueis setup, you had the is he a Sith, is he not a Sith with the Stranger. There were a lot of things set up that are now going to be left dangling, you know, and we don't know how they're going to be picked up, if they're ever going to be picked up. And so, yeah, what do you do? Because I think, Zach, you know, in talking with you, I think about your perspective on Rise of Skywalker, and I know that took a lot of wind out of your sails too. It didn't do that for me to the same extent that it did you. I enjoy the Rise of Skywalker in isolation for what it is. What did you do when you had that disappointment with Rise of Skywalker to get you back into the Star Wars swing of things?
Well, that's a little. It wasn't as bad because at the time, what did we have? We had The Mandalorian going on during that. So, like, even though you didn't love that movie, The Rise of Skywalker, and ultimately, you know, I will still say, even though I find Rise of Skywalker's execution very poor, on paper it is one of the coolest movies on paper. But you had The Mandalorian, and it was kind of a weird thing where this big trilogy ended, and people were like, "Oh man." For the people that didn't like it, oh man, I thought that movie sucked. But we got episode 7, we got, you know, the last 2 episodes of Mandalorian right here, right now, and we're digging this. It was like a weird time where the fan base was like divided on a movie, but like overall Star Wars was united because it was like one season of Star Wars where we all united and got together and were like, The Mandalorian's fucking awesome. Well, I would argue 2 seasons, but I had The Mandalorian, and now I don't know I don't know how I feel with this one. This one feels so much worse because I waited years for this. And for me as a Star Wars fan, I've always been a huge, like, the high fantasy side, the Force side, the Jedi side. These are all topics that are huge for me. I like the other stuff, don't get me wrong, but my main slice of pie is the Force, the Jedi. And ever since, you know, Lucasfilm and Disney took over, they haven't really answered any questions about the Sith at all. And that's why I was waiting for the show, and I feel like I got nothing. And based on what I've said, and I said this before The Acolyte came out, that this will show Lucasfilm, whether fair or not fair, if they can take chances and tell other stories. And my biggest fear and what's really taking the gas out of my sails is they're going, because this is what Lucasfilm has done. They've been very reactionary. Even directors that haven't worked on the properties, if they've had even a half a fart in the air, they lose their movies. We had D&D going to do a High Republic series, literally trying to wrap up Game of Thrones to get to this. George Lucas going to Game of Thrones set. That thing got canceled. And I've always said this will tell them, and they're very reactionary. And I think that instead of saying, look, we possibly might have shit the bed here, here, and here on whatever they did on the back end, because they hired a good showrunner. They gave it the budget, $180 million. It's just the writing fell through somewhere. And I think they're just going to look at it, well, this story was too far off. Rather than saying, we didn't have the right writing. We didn't have the right edge. We didn't bring everything to the table. And it's funny because D23, we've been hearing in Star Wars, we've heard about the Mangold movie, but really we've been hearing this Rey movie and Mandalorian and Grogu. And there's been no real, which one's coming first. It's first it's Mando and Grogu. No, the Rey one might be first. But it's kind of funny that D23, who was front and center on the only Star Wars thing, the Mandalorian and Grogu, because it's safe. It's a safe bet. And it's man, it's going to be a long time before I see Lucasfilm taking any chances with the stuff that I really love.
Yeah, that's a good point. I think it's a very nuanced situation, because the show that had the closest viewership to The Acolyte, as far as the finale is concerned, is Andor, right? And Andor was greenlit for the 24 episodes from the get-go. They knew we're doing these 24 episodes, and that's it. And that, while we in the fan community, for the most part, universally love it, it didn't have as wide of a reach as something like an Obi-Wan Kenobi or a Mandalorian.
Until they found out that the show was good. And then that's when the tracking started picking up, when people got word that it was a good show.
And it gives them award buzz. It's stuff they can submit for that they're not going to do with a Mandalorian or an Obi-Wan Kenobi, right? So there's a reason to keep a project like Andor moving forward. Whereas there's an aspect of The Acolyte that was set up for failure, where it came out in a certain time when they were shifting away from the TV model and going back to the movies. It was kind of the last project of that famed 2020 not collectors, investors call. Yep. So that kind of, had so many projects that fell to the wayside. We don't know even if the Lando thing is happening anymore. Every 6 months we get another nugget that it's happening, and then we don't hear anything for another 6 months and stuff. So there's an aspect of Acolyte that was set up for failure from the get-go. But then I think they encouraged that. Encouraged is too strong of a word. I think they didn't help their situation with the way that the product was produced. The acting being as stiff as it was, the writing being as flat as it was, different things like that. I think if they had taken the time to refine things a little bit more, there's potential within the story beats that they had to tell a good story. It's not, for me personally, it's not the story itself, save for when we get to the finale and you start messing with the Jedi being the bad guys and stuff like that. That, again, if you want to listen to me rant about that, you can go listen to our episode in the feed. But the things with the twins and things with the Sith, and there were different things in The Acolyte that could have been really good. But I don't think that there was, and this is just me speculating and hypothesizing, I don't think there was a real investment in from the Lucasfilm side of things to make sure that this product was good. I think it feels like this was a box that they needed to check because they were too deep into it to not put it out. And so we got what we got. And for me, it's a whole new experience to dislike something to the degree that I do. And you talked about with Rise of Skywalker how on paper it's as excellent as anything out there, and you had Mandalorian going on, stuff like that. It's harder now because there's not that thing going on. Like, we don't have something else going on. So for me personally, I've gone back to watching Clone Wars. Like, I'm doing an animation rewatch right now because I wanted to feel that love of Star Wars again, especially because for me personally, in my fan experience, like, I watched Acolyte, and one of the next things I'm doing is reading Ronin, which is one that I've struggled with. So, like, I've been looking forward to the new High Republic books that are coming out and going back and visiting old things that I know that I love to reignite that Star Wars spark for me.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I need to definitely find that spark. I just, like, when we're going to it, though, it's just a lot of things still, they just don't make sense to me, though. I mean, I can respect somebody taking a swing and it may be missing. To some people, that is, The Last Jedi. But they did take a swing. And whether or not that movie's for you or not, a studio hired a good director who's a great writer to take a swing. And whether that works for you or not, great, whatever. But they did it. And that's the last time, in my opinion, that I felt that they've taken a swing. When you look at The Acolyte, the original idea of the story, and this is okay, so there were like two different things about The Acolyte. When it was originally pitched, it was supposed to be the Darksiders' perspective, which is still how they tried to sell it. The stuff going around is that Lucasfilm told Leslie Headland to incorporate more Jedi and make it more of a, like, basically change the original pitch to a more Jedi-focused in a Sith background story. And I just feel like, yes, Star Wars is for everyone, and it should always be for everyone. But we should try and take a swing when it comes to tonal shifts. We should try and make these things, or, take a swing and make it, try and make something new. When you have shows like House of the Dragon that are coming out after Game of Thrones, the global phenomenon that is Game of Thrones, and it's doing better numbers than anybody ever expected because the writing is good. When there's shows like House of the Dragon that are out right now telling a political, epic that touches on a lot of different subject matter and is very well written, why can't we get that in the Star Wars realm? And I just want to see Star Wars not look at this as we can't tell any stories in this time period, because it's just like Star Wars is really starting to get stale for me. And I know that sounds mean, and I don't want, like, I'm so excited for the Rey movie because even though we've already had Rey, and that, like, I don't like Rise of Skywalker, but, like, I'm so excited if this Rey movie actually happens because it will be completely different territory. That's all I want at this point. Like, yes, do I want my Darth Plagueis? Do I want my Old Republic? Yes, those are, like, when we as Marvel fans got Captain America Civil War. It's like one of those big things, or Endgame. It's a fan nerd thing that I would love, but at the end of the day, I just want a good story, and I want something fresh that feels fresh, and it's just like, will we even get that? I'm scrambling here, man. I'm having...
Yeah, no, I feel what you're saying. Like, to bounce off of something you said a little bit earlier, like them taking a swing, I feel like they were taking a swing on The Acolyte, but I feel like Lucasfilm gave them a wiffle ball bat and a home run derby. Like, they really didn't put the investment in making sure, at least from what I see from the outside, making sure that this had everything that it needed to be successful Whereas you look at something like an Ahsoka, or you look at something like an Andor, and you put those pieces in place that you need to have a show like those be what they need to be. You need a lore master at the head of a show like Ahsoka. You need a great writer who is detached from Star Wars for something like Andor to work. Even in Obi-Wan Kenobi, you need, because that was originally a movie and you're spreading it out, you need a singular figurehead there in Deborah Chow. And those things work better. And so, yeah, it's hard. It's hard to face when you put a lot in something and you feel like, again, like they took a swing, but maybe it wasn't the best swing they could have taken. They shifted what the story was about. They shifted the perspective and things like that. But that's not to say that I think The Acolyte adds nothing to Star Wars, or rather, it's better said like that we can't build off of it. I don't feel like we can't build off of The Acolyte.
We absolutely can.
So let's dig on that. Like, in your mind, like if the story of The Acolyte, whatever that might be, is continued. You know, we saw it with like something like Solo, where you had the Kira book is a way that it's continued. Maybe this Lando show is something that happens, but we got comics around Han Solo around that Solo time period, different things like that. So if Acolyte were to continue in whatever way, shape, or form, how would you want to see that?
So I want to answer that question, and I will, but I want to get to what I really want, because I think I figured it out. That's the point of this podcast, is to help me, and if there's listeners. So what I figured out is, just by talking to you, is what I really want is I want Lucasfilm to get fans like us trust back. When you look at Marvel, everybody complains about post-Endgame. Oh, we've had a downturn. There's been a lot of bad shows that haven't really met our quality up to the standards that we left up to Endgame. And Kevin Feige's, since Ant-Man Quantumania especially, gotten in front of it, and he said, look, we were doing too many things. We were just pretty much greenlighting everything that we have that we could. We were letting go of our quality, and since then, we're now realizing that we need to scale back, we need to get in front of it, and we need to make better choices as far as quality. We got too ahead of our game, and so we're going to go back to what we do best, which is just telling good stories when those stories are appropriate, and only approving scripts that are ready to go and a real story to tell. And then when you go into stuff like Deadpool, which this joke is in the trailer, you're joining at a bit of a downslope, like making jokes, being aware of where we're at and where we're going. That's all I want from Lucasfilm at this point, is just like, give me a plan. I don't need a 636 movie release. I just need like a little bit of like, let's air it out and talk about it. And there's just no word. And that's kind of where I just want like Kathleen, if you're going to stick around and you're still one of the best producers in Hollywood history, like get in front of this shit, like talk about it. Just be like, look, we're trying some shit worked, some shit didn't. We're learning as we go. This is new territory for all of us every time we turn around, but we're going to keep focusing on telling you better stories, and we're going to keep refining Lucasfilm. That's all I want to hear. That's all I want to hear. Just a simple, we're learning, we're growing, we're going, just like Marvel does. It's like they understand their tries, their failures. Where I want to go with The Acolyte is, I would love to see, since you're not getting a show, I would love to see a book. And to be honest, I would want one of the High Republic people to write it. I don't care who, because everyone who, for the most part, who has written in the specifically the young adult to adults, because those are the books that I've really paid attention to. I would want one of them to finish out this story or build upon this story or add flavor to maybe where the show was lacking. I would want a writer like, Claudia Gray or Charles Soule to make a book about it. I don't need a comic. I'd be very interested in a book. You've already laying the foundation. You can get into as much Plagueis flavor as you want, or as little. You can answer the questions But if I'm being honest, I really don't. I don't think they're going to touch on it because of the reception. But I would love to get, Charles Soule, Kevin
and
Scott,
I disagree.
Claudia.
I disagree there. I think there's a solid chance they do continue it, and not because of the Acolyte, but because of the High Republic and the way that the High Republic fandom has been built around books. I think there's a certain aspect of, okay, that didn't transfer over to the TV side as much as we were hoping that it would, but we still got this core book community that's there. Like, and I think about how recent the announcement is of all these prequel books that are coming out. You've got the Kelnaka comic, you've got the Jordan Jecki book, there's a couple other ones, there's the Vernestra book, different things like that, all happening before the Acolyte, that are being labeled as both Acolyte and High Republic content. And so I foresee a not High Republic 2.0, but a keeping the High Republic era alive by telling Acolyte-centric stories. And maybe we get a canon installment of Darth Plagueis, our canon version of the Darth Plagueis book, whatever that would look like. And I know that they are continuing to tell stories in the High Republic era, even though what we were promised as far as the High Republic is concerned is starting to wrap up, and it'll be done in 2025, the Project Luminous aspect of it, if you will. So I think there's a solid chance we get things in that regard, because there are people who are going to be hungry for more things about particularly the Stranger and Plagueis. Like, those are the things that I think have the most people excited as far as the Acolyte. Even those of us like, you and me who aren't as excited, I think those aspects at least are a little intriguing. Maybe we get a story about what Vernestra is saying to Yoda in that conversation, that picks up right as that conversation happens, and Vernestra goes, I actually changed my mind, and I think we should tell everybody because I don't want to be a jerk. That's just my headcanon right now. Obviously
right.
There's better writers out there.
Right.
But yeah, there's definitely a vibe out there that I've gotten from the High Republic authors, and I have no inside knowledge, just to be clear, but just
wish we did.
Oh God, I wish I did. I tried to break Lydia Kang the other day, and she is good. She would not break and give us anything about future projects she may or may not be working on. So trust me, guys, I am trying out here. But the vibe I get from them is that the High Republic is not ending. And so I think that this is a way that you can continue that story and feed two communities at the same time, two parts of the fandom at the same time, with low overhead, low risk, and still being able to be detached from where they're really going to be telling stories, which is the Skywalker saga eras of things, and of course, however far we go with the Rey movie.
Yeah. And I would be down for all of that. I want you to be right. I want more stories in the Acolyte world, and even though this show was a huge letdown and borderline give me a Star Wars identity crisis, I would be totally open for a season 2. Like, if they would have been like, hey, we're doing season 2, we're doing it with Leslie, we're going to correct some of the things that we maybe didn't do correct and try and refine this a little bit, I would have been down if literally everybody aboard was on it again to give it another chance. That's how much I want this to work. I want these stories to work for people. And I know what you were meaning when you were saying this, but I just want to say, because I feel like I have to, it's not that this High Republic, this Acolyte story didn't work. It is that bad writing will never work. Bad writing will never be a success. It never will. And until you get the right people in the room, or the right people that can see the writer's visions in the room, it won't work. But I agree with you. I want as much from this world, from this base story. I I want it all. I just want to continue this. I mean, the premise of the Sith and what they're doing in this timeline, it's so juicy. I mean, it just, for me,
Yeah, for sure.
it's like, I don't care if it's the Acolyte season 2 or a rebrand, whatever it is. It's a juicy premise. You get the right people involved, or you get rid of the people that maybe held back the right people, and you're good to go. And you know, I would take anything and everything, and that's just like that's kind of the hopeful side in me, is that we're gonna get people in the room that want to tell these stories, that somebody that can allow it, and I can't wait to see what happens in the future. At this point, what I really can't wait for is some new management. I'm just going to be honest. Just some new management over the top to revitalize. I can tell you right now, though, just based on like some things I hear, like I'm not saying Jon Favreau is going to take over Lucasfilm. I'm not saying that at all. But I can tell you right now, that man's making the movie he wants to make, whether or not it's.
Oh yeah, for sure.
He's not, because in Lucasfilm, in the board's eyes and Disney's eyes, Jon Favreau right now is gold for Disney. He has created, even say what you will, don't like Mandalorian season 3. That man united us in the most trying Star Wars times. That guy is making the movie that he wants, and he is making Lucasfilm like essentially his bitch. He's making Lucasfilm his bitch, and he's saying
he's printing money at this point.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think Filoni is a part of some of it, but Jon Favreau's making Jon Favreau's movie, and that's the only thing that I really see out of this Mandalorian and Grogu story. A story that I don't really want as far as a movie goes. I think he's going to make his damn movie, and I trust Jon Favreau. Even though it's not the content that I'm super pumped about, I'm excited to see what he can do with a feature film.
Yeah, and so there's two things in there that really stood out to me that you were saying. One is when we do have content that we don't like or don't prefer or didn't hit for us, like there's still aspects of it that make us want more. I think as Star Wars fans, we're almost trained to be hopeful because that's what the stories are about, right? So I think part of dealing with when you don't like something is finding those parts where you're like, I wanted to know more about this, or this stood out to me. Like as many, people might not like The Last Jedi, you can watch that movie and go, I do like the idea of how the Resistance is going to rebuild. I do like the idea of the Force connection between Rey and Kylo. Different things like that. Like there's things you can go, I could do with more story for that. And Acolyte definitely has it. As far as the Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni situation is concerned, like number one, yeah, Favreau is printing money right now. But you got me thinking about how Filoni has been promoted to like the head of creative, essentially. I can't remember what his title is specifically, but he got that title and got that power essentially after Acolyte was well into post-production. So there's not a lot that he could have changed to really help improve the Acolyte.
And I've heard that he didn't have a whole lot in that because he wasn't too thrilled about that story per se. That's what I've heard.
Okay, I hadn't heard that, but I'll take that for a possibility for sure. But if that's true too, he's not guiding it, and it's kind of like, again, that would point to me towards the idea that they were just trying to get this done because they had already committed to getting it done, and they couldn't have another project drop kind of thing. Yeah. So hopefully moving forward, with the slowdown in the amount of content that they're producing and the people that they have in position, things will be a lot better. I really loved your idea of like, one, I do think we need new management, not because I don't believe in Kathleen Kennedy, but just because I think it's time for new ideas to be put in place. And I think we need a shift away from this model of keeping all these secrets. I think one of the things that's really helped Marvel maintain itself is Feige's openness of, yeah, we kind of screwed the pooch on that one. And people can look at that and go, all right, cool. Like, at least you are self-aware of what's going on and you're listening to the reactions to the content you're putting out and you're doing something about it. We don't get that same thing with Kathleen Kennedy, and I think that has become more and more an issue.
And I think that to add that, I think D23, you notice she was not on the stage. Normally she's on the stage. Yeah. I think it was a very intelligent move to keep her away from the stage. And it's not because she's a bad guy in my eyes.
No,
it's simply like Kevin Feige is a comic book fan who happens to be a producer, who happens to be running Marvel, but he was a fan first. She kind of reads off as, no matter how you skin any announcement she's made, she kind of reads off as a politician. And when you get a guy like Dave Filoni in there who lives and breathes it, it doesn't matter what the message is. You can feel it's the proper energy of what it should be when we're making these announcements. You know, he's really the right guy to be the face of it.
Yeah, and you know, Feige is, like you said, a huge comic book fan, and that uniquely puts him in a position where he's going to be effective as the head of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Obviously, it takes a lot of other qualifications. Otherwise, there'd be a lot more Marvels happening in the world, and there's only one Kevin Feige. Yep. But that is an aspect of it. Whereas you look at Kathleen Kennedy, and she is a film producer, but is she a diehard Star Wars fan? I genuinely don't know if she is a Filoni-level nerd. It's not out there if she is. She got the job because that was part of the agreement with George Lucas. And I think that's...
Steven Spielberg said she's the greatest producer Hollywood's ever had. You know?
I think there's an argument to be made for that. Like... she's definitely in the conversation. Like, if you don't have her at least standing around Mount Rushmore of film producers, I think you are being a little inconsiderate of the objectivity of it. But that aside, like, she got the job because of George Lucas wanting her to be in that position. And again, I think that's fine. I think the problem is when there hasn't been an adaptability, and this would be true for Kathleen Kennedy. I would say the exact same thing if it was Dave Filoni making these same mistakes. Like, let's be totally clear about that, and everybody listening knows I'm a Filoni head. There hasn't been that reaction, that correction that we need coming from Kathleen Kennedy. It's come from the actions of Jon Favreau and Dave Filoni. It's come from the words of Bob Iger. We haven't gotten it from Kathleen Kennedy. And I think that's become more of a problem. Yes, she's at the head. She's probably making a lot of these decisions. She's probably, green lighting other ones that people come to her desk with. And I totally get if maybe she doesn't want to be at the forefront or put herself at the face, but you kind of signed up for that when you signed up to be the president of Lucasfilm. And she signed up for a Feige role, and I don't know if she has stepped into a pair of Feige shoes, if you will.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of the issue. And
from a business standpoint, like, you know, Bob Iger loves her. I mean, clearly, because he's stuck by her side through thick and thin. But it's like, from a business standpoint, you guys haven't had outside of Mandalorian and Grogu, which just happened we just got this announcement like last year. I mean, like, your business, essentially, you have not come out with any movie in the it's not coming out almost 7 years by the time the next one comes out, and you're talking about a movie that should be making $1 billion every time. you're missing your margins here as a company. You're not swinging on all cylinders because you can't get a proper director. And I also find it funny that James Mangold has now signed on to do Swamp Thing for DC, and we have not heard anything about the Star Wars thing, but we're hearing that he's doing the Swamp Thing. And just to give everybody like full clarification, when I say I'm hearing things, so the people that I follow, one of the biggest one is called the Insnider. You can get his newsletter. I think it's like dirt cheap. It's like $5 or $1 or whatever. But he's got a show called The Hot Mic that, he is an insider in Hollywood that talks about, he's been a reporter for all of the biggest trades, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, all this stuff. That's where I'm picking. He is now an independent. So if you're like, man, I don't know, Zach keeps saying all this stuff, I want to know if it's wild, check out the Insnider, and that's kind of where I'm finding my stuff. He's broken pretty much anything that you've really heard as far as rumors. Like he broke the whole, what was it? Who's the writer that was supposed to be for the Rey movie? He wrote Watchmen and Lost. It was forever ago.
I want to say Sean Levy.
No. But anyway, he's in with Lucasfilm, and that's where I'm getting my stuff. In case you just want to fact check me or find out for yourself. Speaking of Sean Levy, I listened to an interview, Happy, Sad, Confused, and Josh Horowitz did bring up Star Wars. And it was very weird when this guy is talking about every detail of the making of Deadpool and Wolverine and telling the story behind Hugh Jackman, how it all got produced and where everything's going, how it led to this movie. When he was asked about Star Wars, he was very much like, next question. I just want to throw that out there. It was very much next question.
Interesting.
Yes, just throwing that out there.
We'll have to see. How are you feeling about Skeleton Crew at this point, where you're kind of in the slumps as far as Star Wars is concerned? Are you looking forward to it? Are you kind of shrugging your shoulders at it? Because I know I was very worried and apprehensive about it, and then I saw the trailer, and it kind of gave me the vibes that I needed it to give me, and I felt a lot better. So I'm looking forward to it more than I was, say, 3 weeks ago or whatever it was when the trailer came out. Where are you at with the next and kind of the final new live action product that we are going to have for a while? Like, we have Ahsoka and we have Andor season 2s, but this is the last new one that we've got announced for a while.
I think that if John Watts, if this show, and this might be a very ignorant thing to say, but I'm going to say it. I think if this show ends up being a stink bomb, that it will validate for me that it is not the creators of these shows, but it is some higher up management in Lucasfilm that is getting in the way of the creators to actually make a good show, because John Watts is an amazing director. He's a billion-dollar film director. That Spider-Man trilogy, how many Spider-Mans have we had? Yet he created his own take that was wildly successful. And, in a time where COVID was still very thick, created a billion-dollar box office film with Spider-Man No Way Home in a time where we were not getting box office, a beautiful film, a beautiful trilogy. If he does not come out with a great Star Wars show, it will tell me that there is somebody in Lucasfilm that is getting in the way of Lucasfilm themselves. So I am very excited because I love John Watts. I've been listening to, from the beginning, one of the people I follow, Christian Harloff, The Big Thing, he met up with John Watts and he said, man, I want it to be like, Amberlyn, Stranger Things meets Star Wars. And I'm excited for that premise. I'm very excited. The trailers haven't swayed me yet because I've been a little pessimistic because of the Acolyte but John Watts is an amazing director, so I'm very open for this show. I'm excited to see what we can do. Very skeptical because I got burnt, but what do you want from me? But when I press play, I'm going to be ready. And I'm going to be ready to watch this and give it everything we got. The subdivision thing did not bother me at all. The subdivision shots in the trailer. There's a million planets in Star Wars. God forbid if we can't have a weird subdivision in one of them. I mean, for all we know, there's a planet out there that only eats spaghetti, but instead of meatballs, they put tuna in it. You know, there's going to be some weird shit.
Yeah.
And like,
so
don't be Star Wars.
there.
Not everything has to feel. So give it a try and let's see.
Yeah, for sure. Flip the script there because you said that, you know, if it fails, it points toward management. If it succeeds, and let's not even put it at like Mando season 1 levels. If it's just a really solid, good show, do you feel like it's okay? This is that because it's John Watts, or do you start to get an idea of a certain message around products that work, at least in the streaming side of things?
I think a win is a win. And it doesn't.
Okay.
I think when things are bad, we're looking at the coach, and when things are good, we're looking at the team as a collective. Everything's right. Winning feels good. Losing feels bad. And when we lose, we look at everything. I mean, you just look at Marvel a couple months ago. Man, we're down. Man, I don't know if I want to watch the next Marvel show. I don't think I'm going to stick around for Echo. I'm a guy that watches everything Marvel does, and I didn't watch Echo. Man, I'm not really hyped about this. Deadpool Wolverine comes out. Oh my gosh, I'm reading every single comic arc on Doctor Doom because I'm just so excited. I don't care about the Robert Downey Jr. casting. I'm just like, a win is a win. I'm hyped on the win. I want to keep winning. I'm excited for Captain America. A win is a win, man. You stop asking questions when people are winning, and I don't want to ask questions. I want to just enjoy Star Wars. So if it's a win, you know, I'm pretty much going to be like, okay, cool. What's the next thing? Hopefully this works too.
That's a good point there, like the asking questions thing. I hadn't thought of it from that angle, but like if we're not asking questions about like how it was, or excuse me, not necessarily how, but more why it was made, then I think that's a good thing. Yeah, no, I like that perspective on it. And, you know, the big thing I want is I don't want to lose these streaming shows completely, because I do genuinely love it as a medium for Star Wars. I love having these episodes that you can go back and watch a couple a night and finish a season in a few nights, you know, on a rewatch or things like that. So I'm rooting for Skeleton Crew to be a success for multiple reasons. One, because I just like the vibe that the story is supposed to have. I am holding and waiting before I really allow myself to fully invest in that's what it's going to be, because of the Acolyte saying it was going to be one thing and turning out to be something far different. But I feel, I don't know, I just seeing the trailer felt like, okay, this is what it's going to be. And what I mean by that is it's not going to try to be a show that is breaking and revolutionizing the canon like Ahsoka is in you know, bringing Thrawn back into the galaxy and the zombie troopers and different things like that. It's not going to be this well-written masterpiece expose on the perils of building a rebellion like Andor. It's going to be a really fun, really good show that you can watch with your family over Christmas and have a good time. And that's what I want out of it. Like, I think part of why the Acolyte hurt so bad is because we had so long to put expectations on it that we were bound to be disappointed in one way or another. With this, we all, at least on the network, have been kind of jokingly like, is Skeleton Crew even a real thing? Like, we're not going to be sure it's real until we're actually watching the premiere episode. And there's still part of me that is holding on to that because it just doesn't feel
Nothing
real
is
quite
real
yet.
in Star Wars until it's aired.
Exactly. But the expectations I feel for this are a lot lower, and that's not to degrade it or to say that it's not going to be up to par, but just I feel like this one has almost been managed better than the Acolyte, where the Acolyte, they're saying, oh, it's going to be this story about the Sith, and then we got something else. They're not telling us this is a story about anything. They're telling us it's the vibe of. And that I feel a little bit more comfortable about them being able to execute than we're going to tell this radically different story by looking at the perspective of the Sith. That's,
Right.
you know, harder to do because it's something brand new.
And potentially, I'm going to redact a couple things I said. I said that it's a Lucasfilm problem if this loses, but in reality, it's a Disney Plus problem if it loses, because when you look at the first initial releases, and just to re-educate, when Bob Iger stepped down, he already had these certain shows for Disney Plus: Mandalorian, WandaVision, Falcon Winter Soldier, and Loki. These were the tentpole shows that they were going to be digging. When the new CEO, who is now out, and Bob Iger is back in, when Bob Chapek came in, he slashed Kevin Feige's power, probably slashed Kathleen's, and that's when you start to see these rollouts of approvals for shows. Well, what have we gotten in Marvel has been equally as bad as Lucasfilm. Like, Secret Wars did not go off well. She-Hulk did not go off well. What is the Echo did not go off well. And, even though I like it up until the end, Hawkeye did not go off well. This could just be the last. If this show is bad, this could just simply be the last remnants of a older regime that has since been changed out, and they're coming in with new. And I think when it comes to Disney Plus, Star Wars, storytelling, I think they're going to head in the right direction. They're not there yet. And the reason I say that is Daredevil Reborn, because they completely reshot that show after Bob Chapek came out. It was under a different story plot. It wasn't going to have anything to do with the Netflix thing. It was all its own. And since Kevin's had his chance, they've spent the money to completely reshoot the show, brought back in this Netflix thing. It has a little bit of a darker, it feels exactly like where Netflix left off, which tells me we're going to tell different stories in this. We are going to put production in this. And I think that regardless of Skeleton Crew, Lucasfilm and all, I think overall, from here on out, when we do get stories from Marvel or Star Wars, they're going to be under a different lens, because I think this is the last of the make anything and everything, because that was Bob Chapek's whole goal, was to greenlight anything and everything for Disney Plus.
And I think that's a really important point you just made, because
it's not fun topics, but it's true topics.
No, and in there, what I heard was we tend to blame the people who are in charge now for problems that were started years ago.
Yep.
Right? We do it in all aspects of life. We blame this president for problems that were started by a previous president. We blame this teacher for a systematic issue that is a system of the school that has been around forever. Anywhere you look, we do that. But I don't think we've really considered that in our media. Like there are certain aspects of the Bob Chapek regime which are still around, but he did handcuff a lot of people. Like it sounds like, everybody was free to make everything and anything, but at the same time, he took away, Kevin Feige's power. He reduced Kathleen Kennedy's power. He was.
And these are all facts you guys can look up, by the way.
Yeah, for sure. Like he was not interested in quality. He was purely interested in quantity. He was a bottom line person. He just really at
one point he had a banker as the creative head. So Alan Horn, who brought Kevin Feige into the MCU and started this whole thing, he had his banker buddy as the head of creative as the head of the film division for Disney. And that's why he got fired very publicly. Don't feel bad for him, though, because he went away with millions. But that's why he got fired very publicly at a Elton John concert that the board was hosting.
Well, and you look at the fact also that Bob Iger came out of retirement to make up for what he deemed his biggest mistake. I believe he's been quoted saying something of that nature.
They hate
with
each
Bob
other.
Chapek. So yeah, like
so we're
a lot
getting
of this
into
falls
Bob.
on the,
We're getting into Bob Iger's reign just now. All the things that he did 3 years ago, we're just now getting into that.
And the Bob Iger reign before had the start of Mandalorian. It had the sequel trilogy. It had Rogue One and Solo and different things.
And Andor.
Andor
Was a part of that. It took years to get off the ground because it was like one of the first announced things, but it took forever to actually get into production. But yes, that was under that regime.
So I think we do, with that in mind, have to provide some grace towards when it delineates into the Bob Iger regime part 2, because, you know, we're going to get this new era where it's going to be focused more on the films. Skeleton Crew is kind of the last major thing that we're going to get that was really produced primarily under Bob Chapek, or rather developed under Bob Chapek. It started, of course, with the
no more Bob's Disney. Call. This is getting exhausting to pronounce.
Yeah, I know. Of course, it was started originally, you know, under the Iger era of the original one, but then the bulk of the production would have been during Chapek's reign. So we got to have some grace there. We've got to understand the business side of things, which we don't like to talk about when we're telling good stories. But when we're not telling good stories, it does come down to, all right, what was the business side of this? You know, it's kind of like my family's been in the restaurant business forever. My dad worked in for Applebee's for over 30 years.
Love and Applebee's. It was like, I'm going to Vermont. That's the place I'm going after. Good man.
But they would change the menu, and it was like, what was the reasoning behind it? And there was a lot of times it was money behind it, and then the quality would suffer, and they would lose money because the quality would suffer because they were trying to save money, and then they would have to go back and rebrand everything to get people to come back with better food. And it was like, if you had just done the better food in the beginning, and the I guess middle management or stuff that my dad was, he was more upper management, but that's another story for another day. But like, the people who are not making the final verdict are saying, hey, the people who have their feet on the ground are saying, hey, this isn't going to work, and the people up top are not listening. That becomes a problem. And I think we've had people saying, hey, this isn't working, and we had people who weren't listening before. I feel like we've got people who are going to start listening now. We have a female written and directed movie about our female Jedi, Rey. We've got the popularity of Mando and Grogu. All right, cool. This is so popular. Let's take it to the big screen. You know, and I don't think they're overselling this movie as like, this is going to be the return of Star Wars to the movies. It's like, this is the promotion of Mando and Grogu from the TV to your silver screen. So despite the fact that we have the Acolyte and we both struggled with that, with the better feelings that I have about Skeleton Crew, the reign of the High Republic continuing, and the direction that I see them trying to course correct towards, I'm starting to feel better. Of course, execution is everything, and they could fall flat on their faces in all of these things, and we could come back a year from now and go, man, we were totally wrong to give them another chance. But I do feel like they're setting themselves up for success in a very different way than they did when they were really getting the Acolyte going.
And with that being said, let's talk about, on next episode, we'll talk about some of the successes and some of the things we're looking forward to. We've done it before, but we should probably do it again. You know, a little bit of yin and yang for that. But
yeah, I'm game.
With that being said, guys, that is this episode of Sith Talk. You can find Sith Talk on under the Clashing Sabers feed on all places podcasts are found. Brandon, can you tell us about what we do here at Clashing Sabers outside of podcasting?
Well, we, of course, have our nonprofit where we put Star Wars books into classrooms across the country. We raise funds for that via our Patreon, which 100% of the money, not the proceeds, 100% of the money that is submitted on Patreon goes directly to buying and shipping books. So literally, we pay for the books, we pay for the postage. Those are the two things that the money that you submit on Patreon goes to. We don't cover our overhead. We don't buy new equipment with it. We don't do any of that stuff. We don't cover hosting fees. All of that we handle ourselves because we want to make sure we can get as many Star Wars books into the hands as many kids as possible. So if you want to help us out with that, of course, you can go over to our Patreon, patreon.com/clashingsabers, which is in the show notes also. Or if you are a teacher or you know a teacher or you have a kid with a teacher, or you can look up a teacher in the Yellow Pages or wherever you would do that nowadays. You can nominate said teacher over on our website, clashingsabers.net. Being the beginning of school, as I kind of referenced, different people are starting and things like that. There's no better gift you can give a classroom than a giant box of free books. Because we're not sending 5 books to them. When we send books, we send them by the hundreds of dollars. We are not stingy here. We have so many people who have been supportive of us over the years, whether that's from our fundraiser or our great patrons, that we're able to send a lot of books to kids. So please nominate teachers, because that's the way we get them into the hands of these kids, and we can't do it without you guys submitting it. So if you want more information on that, you can, of course, go over to our website. You can follow us on all the socials, or you can reach out to me at clashingsabersnetwork@gmail.com, and I can hook you up with any information, answer any questions you have in that regard.
And before we wrap up, I would like to say that if this episode struck any thoughts about, how you feel or how you're feeling, let's talk about it. Let's talk about it in a positive, fun manner. Feel free to comment on the Sith Talk Instagram, the Clashing Sabers Instagram, the Facebook group. Let's have some fun, conversations. And, if you're feeling a little bit down about Star Wars, you need a little hope, check out all of our other shows. That's the one thing I love about being a part of Clashing Sabers is I have my own thoughts, but there's so many different thoughts in this group, and there's so many different takes that you can always be surprised by them. So with that being said, guys, may the Force...
One thing I want to...
There you go.
Sorry.
There you go. Get it.
One thing I want to add on there, too, if you're looking for, just the ability to feel great about Star Wars and the hands that Star Wars is in, go listen to our interview that came out recently with Lydia Kang. It should be right there in your feed if you go to the Clashing Sabers feed. You get it all in one place. But, oh my God, talk about a great Star Wars fan and just a great creator to talk to. I had so much fun. We all had so much fun talking with Lydia Kang, and she really peels the door back on what it was like creating books for the High Republic and stuff like that. But you really get a feel for just the energy around the creation of Star Wars in that interview. So make sure if you're looking for hope, of course, obviously, like Zach said, hit us up on all the socials, but go listen to that episode, because you cannot walk away from hearing Lydia Kang talk and not feel just great about Star Wars.
And with that being said, guys, may the Force be with you.
Always.
Always.
All Clashing Sabers productions are the intellectual property of the Clashing Sabers Network and ClashingSabers.net. All licensed sounds and images are the property of their respective copyright holders and are used for informational and educational purposes only. For more information on our nonprofit or to nominate a teacher, go to ClashingSabers.net. For questions or inquiries, please email us at ClashingSabersNetwork@gmail.com.
You're just going to walk away?